by unknown actors to justify nationwide martial law. They've also prompted opposition lawmakers to call the country a gangster land and the murder capital of Asia. Buena Banal reports.
The choir sings at the funeral mass for Ferdinand Bote, slain mayor of General Tino in Nueva Ecija province.
Hindi ka namin malilimutan, Papa. Ang dami namin gusto sabihin sa'yo. Sana makuha natin yung hustisya.
A family in mourning is a common sight in Metro Manila's slum communities, which have borne the brunt of vigilante-style killings linked to the Philippine drug war. But in the cases this past week, the targets were local officials, only one of whom was linked to drugs. With martial law still in effect in Mindanao after the Marawi siege, critics of the administration fear these recent killings could be used to justify extending military rule across the entire country. The palace, as well as the president's allies in Congress, have brushed off such concerns, and police insist the murders of the local leaders are unrelated to one another.
There's no patterns as other quarters would suggest, because the motives are different, the modus operandi are different, and alleged perpetrators are different people.
But opposition lawmakers still blame President Rodrigo Duterte for what they call a culture of violence.
Well, it has a very pernicious negative effect on local government officials and their constituents, because our LGUs, our local government units, are supposed to be that basic level or unit of government to institutionalize rule of law, equal application of the law, due process, and a culture of human rights, which is an exact opposite of a culture of violence and impunity.
Critics also point to the language that Filipinos hear from the presidential podium.
If you have a president that makes jokes about killing mayors or local officials, and the president's word is taken as the law by some people.
Police admit they are not discounting political motives behind the local leaders' murders. They say they have documented a pattern of shooting incidents in the lead-up to local elections. The country will vote for members of the lower house of Congress as well as provincial and town leaders next year. Philippine election season has always been marred by violence. The 2016 elections, when nearly a dozen died on election day itself, was considered peaceful by local authorities. But rights advocates see a link between the recent killings of local executives and state policies such as the drug war, which they say result to local communities being accustomed to bloodshed. At Mayor Bote's funeral mass, the townspeople are still in shock, wondering which town or city could be next. Buena Bernal, Channel News Asia, Nueva Ecija, Philippines.
U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Brussels, where